Hi everybody, this week on Alvarez TV we've got a special guest. It's the Gibson Advanced Jumbo. Great guitar in acoustic guitar history. We're going to listen and talk about this instrument and also a little bit about Mr. Orville Gibson himself.
That sounds nice up there.
Sounds nice up there.
It does.
Lacks a bit down here compared to that.
Mm-hmm.
But the trebles are warm.
Yeah, it's really nice. Nice guitar.
Hi everybody.
Hi guys.
Welcome back.
How are you?
What are you doing today, mate?
Well, so we were sitting around the other day playing guitars and Chris brought out this old Gibson that he's had for what, 20 years?
20 years, yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's an advanced
Jumbo.
It just sounded really nice, so we thought, well, we're giving some love to, we always give love to Martin.
We always give love to Martin.
How could you not? And then, of course, recently Collings.
We had a Collings on the show.
And then we thought, well, why not?
Bring another friend.
Bring a friend along for the ride.
This is a reissue model.
Yeah.
If it was real...
If it was one of the first 300 that was built in 1936, we would be...
Well, you could swap it for a Porsche, maybe. If you were so inclined, I'd keep the guitar.
Yeah.
Personally. So they were made in 1936. It came out in 36, ended in 39.
It wasn't a long run, was it?
Short run.
Yeah.
3 years, 300 pieces made, and the originals are worth, I think, about $70,000.
Wow.
And it was Gibson's first flat top 14
fret. So at that time we had D28s, which was slightly more expensive.
This is probably Gibson's answer to the herringbone D28, because when this came out it was called the Bone Crusher because it was louder than a herringbone D28. It got nicknamed the Bone Crusher. All design around then, it was always, we've said this many times about more volume. And certainly when this came out, it was very much, they were going after some of that dreadnought success.
Yeah.
That Martin was
But it was
enjoying.
in kind of a golden era, wasn't it? That pre-war.
It was, yeah.
Probably very old wood. This
was Adirondack. I guess the first ones were probably, some of them were probably Brazilian, and then the reissues had been Indian rosewood. The original ones were Adirondack. This one was Sitka, and then they brought out some new ones recently. Another reissue of this with Adirondack.
Oh yes, I saw that.
But it was like, it was all seemed very competitive around volume because in 37, Gibson then came out with the SJ 100. Then the SJ, was it the J200, the SJ200 was 39-ish.
Right.
Came out with this, which was their biggest sort of body, was a big 14-fret loud guitar, let's go after that dreadnought business.
Yeah.
And then they thought, oh, we'll put that aside, another side, but then they came out with the J200.
Which was...
massive.
Must have looked like enormous at the time.
And this was discontinued. And then obviously the J45.
Yeah.
Which wasn't discontinued.
Yeah.
So it's basically like one of these, but it was more like the...
But slope shoulder though.
More... Yeah. I mean, there was a Southern Jumbo as well. There was a J35. I think came out the same year as this.
$35.
Which was a $35 guitar. This was more expensive.
Yeah, that was. I think that was $80.
Which was
so it's round about a kind of almost like a $2,000-ish, bit less.
Yeah. So this was their premium line. I'm not sure why they stopped it, because if you read collectors and people who write about this stuff, like this was the one.
Yeah.
Like it's so collectible now, and it was, you know, it's so lauded in sort of journals of different acoustics. I'm not sure why, but the J45 became the standard and moved forward.
Yeah.
The advanced bit about it, why it was called an Advanced Jumbo, was, you know, was definitely they were messing around with the bracing.
Yeah.
Whether they moved it forward, or there's certainly some serious scalloping going on with this. If this is an exact copy of the 36, like the braces are well tapered.
Right.
So they were definitely going for volume. It's like, let's beat that D28 kind of mentality. What's even more interesting, in our conversations, we talk about CF1 and CF2. Nobody really talks about Orville Gibson very much.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, I was doing some research into this as well, and he wasn't really around. I think he was a musician, right? He was a very respected
cabinet maker to begin with, I think.
Yeah, and he became an extremely respected luthier, like a maker of fine instruments. I think he made a lot of violins. He was making mandolins in the beginning, wasn't he? And certainly, I think his name was synonymous with quality. That first consortium of businessmen, they sort of used his name to advance the company or something, right?
First documented instrument was in 1894. He applied for a patent for an archtop mandolin and guitar in 1896 and was awarded it in 1896.
Right.
What Orville was doing was full carving instruments. Even when people were pressing instruments, even back then, he was taking thick pieces of wood and he was carving the tops and the backs out. He was very much influenced, in my reading anyway, by violin making. Even though his approach to the guitars and the mandolins was different to a violin, he wanted that full carved approach, which I still think the custom shop in Gibson do. A hand-carved L5 is a very expensive instrument. He invented the archtop guitar. He invented archtop construction. He's certainly credited with that, and he certainly applied for a patent for it and got that. And that's in the late 1800s. And then all of a sudden, there's this business consortium. This is in Kalamazoo in Michigan. So he came from New York, but in Kalamazoo, he had his shop. And then there was a local business consortium formed the Gibson Mandolin and Guitar Company.
Yes.
And he wasn't a shareholder.
He became a shareholder, I think, after he bought some shares later on, right?
So the Gibson Guitar Company, or Mandolin and Guitar Company, was created by these business people.
Yeah.
Orville was not one of the shareholders. And then I believe they bought the patent, and then they gave him a royalty, and he continued to be, for a short time, developing instruments. But somehow he fell out with the company quite early.
Yeah.
And the company was formed in 1902, and Orville was gone by 1907. And apparently the last couple of years wasn't around a great deal.
Yeah.
Now you've got an incredibly progressive designer. I mean, he invented the archtop instruments, or designed the archtop mandolins and jazz guitar, what became known as archtop jazz guitars. But he also made the harp guitar, which was like completely nuts at the time, and kind of still is, and very few people can play them. You know, the big ornate 2 sets of strings. And Muriel Anderson, I don't know if anybody knows her. She's
because they have their roots like way back in the sort of 18th century, don't they? The harp guitars.
Yeah. So he was hugely progressive designer, and I think you've probably got this creative mind with this business consortium started falling apart, and he was out. If you read a bit about Orville Gibson, he definitely struggled with some health issues.
Especially in the last sort of decade of his life, I think he struggled, didn't he? Yeah.
From 1902 onwards, so he's 50-something. I think it was 60, was he 62 when he passed away or something? 1856.
That's right.
1918 he passed away.
Yeah.
He died quite young, and for those last 10 or 15 years, he struggled with some health issues. There was talk about him having a bit of a nervous breakdown when he was coming out of the original company. And there was also discussion about that he had some very eccentric ideas how to run the business and what and the instruments that they should be making, and that was it. He was gone. So it's like you've got this guy who's created this, kind of amazing legacy thereafter, but he wasn't around to see that, which is quite sad.
And this guitar was in production almost 2 decades after he died.
Yeah. The year after he passed away, Lloyd Law joined the company.
Yes.
I believe. I need to fact check that. I think Lloyd Lord joined in like 1919, 1920, and he sort of then designed, you know, the fives, you know, the L5 and the mandolin, F5, wasn't it?
F5, yeah.
And you know, they're still the pinnacle of those kind of designs for those instruments. And then Gibson manufacturing obviously continued to grow and grow. Stayed in Kalamazoo until it outgrew that. Now it's in Nashville,
yeah,
and Bozeman,
Montana.
Correct.
Yeah.
Bozeman, Montana.
So all the acoustics are made up in Montana, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's more reading to do on Orville. He sounds like an incredibly interesting character. Kind of formed that company or created those early products, and then it sort of went on a life of its own after that. Until, of course, Mr. Les Paul appeared. And then, because you kind of think of Les Paul as Gibson rather than Orville. Do you?
I know what you mean.
You know, I've been in many discussions. Everybody, you know, like Les Paul's the big historic
Les Paul,
thing.
I mean, wow, we could do a show on Les Paul.
We could.
Especially from the recording angle. God, he
invented 4-track, didn't he?
Yeah, multi-track, it was all him.
So,
his playing was absolutely incredible. Wonderful player.
I saw him in the Ryman Auditorium, Nashville, about 20 years ago.
Right.
By luck,
really?
just by chance.
He was still doing a sort of an open mic kind of night, I think, in somewhere in New York.
He had a residency in New York for years, in
the Village.
And anyway, but then obviously the whole Gibson electric thing took over the world virtually. But this is an Advanced Jumbo. When I first got into guitar making and development, it was the only high-priced guitar I had at the time. I did have an old Loudon that somebody gave me, but I'd worn the top away.
Right.
It was seated top. There was a massive hole here from gigging. And when I first got into the guitar business, and this was the guitar that I thought,
like the Benchmark.
The Benchmark?
Yeah.
And it is a nice sounding guitar. But now we're here, and this sounds a little thinner. It's still lovely, but it's definitely hasn't got the presence of that. Let's do that. Quick swap. It's lighter as well.
Yeah.
Same scale length.
It's quite tight, isn't it?
I mean, the body shape it is different, but same scale length. Definitely, this guitar was very important to me. I'm glad I've still got it, but I feel as though we've caught it up and maybe even overtaken it totally.
Perhaps.
But it's a historic acoustic guitar within acoustic guitar history.
Yeah, it has a significance and an importance as well.
And if you ever get to try one or even buy one, snap them up, because there's been several reissued periods in the 90s and 2000s. And I think now there's something out. Good to have in your collection.
Absolutely. If you have $5,000 spare.
Maybe.
They're not cheap.
That's true.
But they are good. They are nice. Very, very nice. Beautiful. Iconic.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Nice talk about Orville instead of Martin for a change.
Absolutely.
We'll bring some other guest guitars on as we move forward. Catch you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button and consider subscribing to our channel. If you want to watch more videos like this one, click the video on the screen now.